So for this session, first of all, let me welcome you all for this deep panel on energy management. I'm really happy to have 3 different utilities sharing different perspectives over the topic, and I'm sure that this will be a really insightful session for all of us. So we will have speakers from CLP, EDP, and ESB. And to give you an overview and a quick introduction, from CLP, we have Pubs and Travis. Pubs is an associate director at Digital Products Smart Energy Connect. Travis is the general manager at Energy Management CLPE Solutions. Then from EDP, we have Paulo Monteiro from Redes, the distribution side of EDP, and we will have Paul Fitzpatrick, head of customer solutions at ESB. What we have in mind for this session is that we can start with some overview, some perspectives of each utility, but then let's make it a free-flow conversation where anyone can interrupt at any moment to ask the questions that you find suitable. So I would kickstart this session inviting Pubs and Travis for an introduction from the CLP side.
Thanks. So yeah, this is Travis. Pubs and I will go through some of the pitch. Will be quick, not point by point. But to start with, you heard from early about the 120 history of CLP. We are going from a local utility in Hong Kong, now have operation across the Asia Pacific. One way I think we always talk about is, you heard from our chairman as well, also is we going our business with the purpose. And I guess it's also along the trend. That's how we're trying to build the utility of the future, that's direction, and addressing some key areas like how the harnessing of the power of technology and responding to the climate change. I think these are the key elements. So I think that link to why we're doing on the energy management is a key topic in terms of the decarbonization for the climate change. The next one. So basically, I would say our decarbonization journey is pretty aligned with our customer expectation. So one of our key goals is how, as a technology, as a utility company, how we can deliver sustainable energy and infrastructure solution to our client. So it becomes much more than just providing the power, but along even our own decarbonization, like changing from non-history cogeneration to natural gas to nuclear to renewable, how we become much lower carbon content in terms of our generation portfolio, so that the customer that rely on our electricity become along our journey of reduction of carbon emission. So that's the way we help our customer in their net zero journey. And I would say, if you look at the bottom part, there's a few steps our journey towards a zero carbon is like from clean energy source and electrification. So how we turn the customer from like gas boiler or to vehicle to electric vehicle. And then there's a lot of areas about operation and energy efficiency, help the customer use the energy wisely. And then finally, to offset any unavoidable carbon emissions. So these are the part that we're doing. So next one. So if we go into that 4-step, you can see, apart from what I mentioned, we try to be green in our generation source. At the same time, we also help customer build distributed renewable, like rooftop PV solar, and also some other, sometimes it's the floating PV on reservoir, other solution. We help our community in Hong Kong build different green solutions. For electrification, like EV charging infrastructure is a typical case. That's how we can accelerate the electrification of all the vehicle. And then for operation efficiency, there's a lot. From building technology, from consultancy services, from how to line up some smart solution, digital solution that we can adopt in different building and facility, demand side response solutions. So there's a many way. I guess a lot of startup in specialize in different solution could contribute in this area to help the customer or building in having the much better energy efficiency. And the final step we really offset, that's how we are investing in like India, China, and other locations with our renewable investment generation, so that we can bring our customer like the carbon credit for them in Hong Kong. So I guess that's how we can help them to offset with our expertise. So basically that's aligned with our offer. If you look at the building in Hong Kong, Hong Kong is not a like big industrial or different type of like our economic rely on a lot of different type of buildings, commercial building, and 90% of the electricity consumed in Hong Kong used in different types of building. I mean, like including residential and all type of commercial industrial building. And over 60% of the CO2 is also come from buildings. And if we look at the electricity consumed in the building, which is 90% of our Hong Kong consumption, 60% from those electricity consumed in building are from lighting and aircon. That's why we want to focus when we want to tackle the carbon issue. We'll see how we can help in terms of air conditioning and lighting. So the direction is like we see the trend of digitalization, decentralization of generation, and the need for decarbonization. So along this mega trend, we will see how we can support those buildings along this. So next slide talk about the common challenge what we see in a lot of building. They have a long age history, so that's why very basic design with aged facility or equipment. However, a lot of building have limited capex for major retrofit for upgrade. And same as the building, the workforce also age. With people get into the engineering field as a facility manager, we're losing a lot of experience operation and maintenance staff. And the third one is about the OPEX pressure, operating expense. They look for saving of operation costs, energy costs, while at the same time they have the ESG target, carbon footprint reduction target. They may want to have green building certificate for better rent. And then finally, it's about the tenant expectation. So a lot of tenants now looking for smart and green user experience. So all this come together is how we can help, how technology may help. So how do you envision the building of the future? There's a different aspect. While the trend of like decentralization, you see starting to have more distributed generation or energy storage or EV charging requirement in different facility and building. So you may need a like sort of like microgrid solutions or decentralized building management system to help you coordinate among this distributed energy resources from generation to controllable loading to storage. And then from the building facility itself, we also pay attention to the HVAC optimization, because the cooling is a major energy consumption. What technology we can apply in the equipment like AI controls or different monitoring, it may help in terms of the chiller plants. We also look into the monitoring, condition monitoring or predictive maintenance solution, which can help reduce the maintenance costs and improve the efficiency of the equipment. In the tenant side, there are also, like apart from energy monitoring or lighting, air conditioning control in the user space, then people also concerned about the indoor air quality, and also how we help the like commercial building to have better space utilization is also area to improve overall energy efficiency. So these are different aspects what we see with potential applying like different technology in the building, and which is also along the mega trend or along the decarbonization journey of the customer. So Pops, you want to continue on that?
Yeah, thanks, Travis. I'm super excited to be here, and actually very excited to be here, especially with Travis. As a matter of introduction, so I run a team called Digital Products under Innovation, and we have a product house that goes through a process of finding the right products. Either we develop or we partner, and then we bring these to market. So I work very closely with Travis, who leads the sales and implementation team. And what you see, in fact, here is a range of just some of the products that we've been putting together over the last few years. On the left-hand side are a range of products for visibility of what's happening in a building. On the right-hand side, it's a little bit deeper. So the products at the bottom are really focusing on addressing those opportunities for energy wastage in the HVAC area. So what you heard earlier about 60% of the energy consumption. And then at the top, these are a range of solutions for the tenant area. These have all come around because we've been hearing what our customers have been highlighting, but also have been through some inspiration from some of the free electron sessions. One of the commonalities amongst all of these is that there is a digitization aspect around it. So there's problems you heard earlier from Travis around aging workforce, around CapEx challenges, and just around wastage of energy. These are all being addressed here. And I just wanted to add really 2 points. One was from a utility perspective, and then one for the startups that are online. So from a utility perspective, what I find really exciting is that all these products give a lot bigger visibility of what's happening within a customer. So historically, this has been the relationship where a utility will understand what's happening with the customer just up to the meter itself. But then you don't really understand how customers are using our core product. And what we have now is with those different ranges of solutions, you get much, much deeper insight as to how our core products are being used. When is the consumption being used at specific times, but also how as well. So those types of solutions where we have IoT solutions, such as smart office products, we really get to understand things like ventilation usage, air quality, and also just skill sets as well, because we start to see how customers are using some of their key equipment. So insights is really valuable. Just from a startup perspective and how we bring these to market, just to finish off, we go through a fairly structured process. So firstly, we determine what the customer needs are, and that comes from certainly Travis and his team, where we get insights from sales teams. We also have direct engagement with our customers through focus groups, through research, and even just how they interact with some of our digital channels. Secondly, channels such as free electrons has been invaluable to meet startups like yourself, and also to brainstorm ideas with other utilities. Now, that's just identifying and potential solutions, but then we really want to be sure that we can put our name behind it. So we go through an extensive trial process. We put these deployments in our own CLP properties or with some friendly customers to both understand how the product works, and then also to understand what the real value proposition is from a Hong Kong perspective. And it also helps us understand the cost structures from the product pricing, but also the installation aspects. Subsequently, we define some commercials, so figure out a go-to-market, a revenue share arrangement. And then ultimately in step 5 is where we figure out what are the best strategies to go for a specific sector. The way we offer some of these smart solutions for a school is going to be very different to how we would offer it to a hospital, for example. So determining that based on our existing knowledge from CLP and our customer insights, as well as working with our product partners to see how it's worked well in other geographies, has been quite invaluable. And then ultimately we'll go through a deployment. I know some of our highlights include deploying an edge-based chiller optimization in a large shopping mall. We've put a building analytics at the airport, and there's a range of others that we can talk about. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how CLP has been transitioning from providing these energy services, and then how we go about doing this from finding problems and then making sure that we can have it address some of the opportunities that are out there. So I'll perhaps stop there and pass it back to yourself, Andre.
Yeah, thank you, Pabs and Travis, for this introduction. I think it was a great setting on everything that we have been talking about on the topic of energy management. And I would now give the floor to Paulo Monteiro from EDP to share some thoughts on the EDP perspectives. Does it resonate with what you've been working on at EDP? Is it something different? Feel free to share some thoughts on this, and welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, Andre. So let me just share the screen with you. Okay, so my name is Paulo Liban Monteiro. Okay, I think now it is. I work at Redes. So Redes is in Portugal. Redes is the distribution system operator in mainland Portugal with around 6 million customers. And I'm very happy to be here and to be able to share with you some thoughts about the challenges and the work that we have done with some examples around microgrids and the integration of distributed generation in the distribution grid. So in the next 10 minutes, more or less, I'd like to share with you some general challenges around the evolution of the grid, and then to give you 3 examples of work that we have been doing in this evolution of the grid. First, with a project for DER integration, so distributed energy resources integration. Then the building and operation of a microgrid at the Berlenga Island project. And finally, share with you what we are doing in terms of the accelerator for the energy transition in the city of Porto, in the north of Portugal. So starting with the, are you okay? I'd like to share with you some general challenges regarding the evolution of the distribution grid. And I'm sharing with you some work that INESCTEC, Research and Development Institute in Portugal, did for us, focusing now just on the part of observability, protection, control, and automation of the distribution grid. The improvement in terms of those functionalities is mandatory for the future management of a grid that will be much more dynamic. And here in this kind of evolution forecast, or we are addressing several functionalities that will need to be improved in time, both in terms of the medium voltage grid and in terms of in the top part of the slide, and in terms of the low voltage part of the grid in the bottom part of the slide. In this kind of roadmap, we have also, I'd say, 3 sections. The left part section, the vertical on the left, that I'd say we are addressing in these years, during the next 5 years. Then the central part of the roadmap that we should address during the next decade, and then the right part of the roadmap that eventually in the next 2 decades we will have to address. So I'd say this is an evolution forecast addressing MV and LV part of the grids, and addressing specific areas of improvement in terms of observability, protection, controls, automation, both for MV and LV. I will not go in detail for each of those lines, it is too much, but anyway, the general idea that I would like to give you is that we need to improve this functionality, I'd say mainly in terms of the low voltage part of the grid, because this is the less known part of the grid for us and will be much impacted by the distributed generation and also by the electric vehicle. But of course, also in the medium part, we will need a lot of more knowledge about the grid, the dynamic changing of the topology of the grid, about automated solutions for self-healing, adaptive protections regarding the transformation of the topology or the dynamic evolution of the topology of the network and so on. And for the low voltage part, we'll need to improve a lot the ability to observe the grid, to understand what is the status of the grid. Of course, with the rollout of smart metering, we are already improving a lot the knowledge that we have regarding the low voltage grid, but of course we need still a lot more to do in order to be able to understand what's happening on the grid, and then to be able to act either remotely or in an automated way, as long as we are able to deploy those more automated solutions. And I'd say eventually even working with island operation, if that will be the case in the future. Okay, but this is the general idea in terms of challenges for the grid, focusing on observability, protection, control, and automation. Of course, this is a focused insight regarding the evolution of our grid. It is not exhaustive. Of course, there is a lot of more things to do. But anyway, I think it was interesting with you to share this kind of roadmap along the next years, and there is a long way to go from here until we have really a very dynamic, adaptive grid operating in the field. Okay, so moving to a few examples of what we have been doing. The first example is the Sensible project. This was an Horizon 2020 project where we tried to demonstrate that it was possible to manage in a very integrated way a lot of different and diverse distributed energy resources. In fact, we used for this project a lot of resources connected to mainly to the low voltage part of the grid. We have used batteries for storage of energy, both at the secondary substation level or grid level, low voltage grid level, but also residential batteries that we installed in specific customers. We have also made use of thermal storage control. For that, we have also installed home energy management systems in several houses. We have also, of course, installed the PV or make use of installed PV in several locations at the low voltage grid, and we also made use of our energy storage MV facility that we have also in the same location where we did this project. In the end, it was possible to demonstrate that it is possible, in fact, to operate the grid in a very integrated way. Of course, if we find a way to interact with all those resources, if we have the adequate tools for managing all those resources in almost real time, if we have the capability, of course, to observe the grid, to understand what's going on the grid, and or if we cannot observe, at least if we can foresee, we can predict what is the situation in every node of the grid. So in the end, this was a very interesting project. We were able, in fact, to reach our objective. It is true, of course, that this kind of operation of the grid, even in an islanding mode that we demonstrated was possible to operate, it is very different to make it in a very controlled way in a pilot than to have it used normally in our operation of the grid. We'll need years until we will be able to do this as a normal operation of the grid. But it was very insightful and very helpful for us to understand how this integration worked. In fact, in the end, it was even selected as a flagship project by the European Union. Okay, the second project that I'd like to share with you is the construction, the building of a microgrid at the Berlenga Island in Portugal. This is a very small island that is 10 kilometers away from mainland. And the project consisted in building a microgrid, a sustainable renewable microgrid in the island. The island is a reserve of the biosphere by the United Nations, so there is some specific care that we need to have with this island. Previously, the previous situation is that we had 3 diesel generators working with noise, with the emissions of CO2. We were consuming 15,000 liters of diesel per year, and we had to transport every year the fuel to the island with the risk of spill for transporting this across the sea. So the solution was to implement a PV generation-based solution with some storage, of course, for the night, for the days without sun, with a control system able to dynamically control the sources of energy. And we have also keep there. In fact, we put a new diesel generator as a last resource that is still available there. But I think that since the beginning of operations, 1.5 years ago, it didn't work yet. But anyway, it is there in case it is needed. But this was a very interesting. So of course, it is a very small solution, but it was very interesting, not only by the solution itself, which is a simple solution, working, useful, but also it was a way to collaborate a lot with the municipality, with the local people, a few of them living there or passing a lot of time in the island, and also with the government, with the European Union, because there was a lot of bureaucracy that we had to overcome in order to be able to build this solution and to operate. As you know, we are a very much regulated company, distribution company. We cannot produce energy, but here we were able to produce and to distribute energy. Okay, the last example that I'd like to share with you is the energy transition accelerating in the Porto. This is a collaboration with the municipality in order to develop and demonstrate advantage the city for supporting the energy transition. This includes also a demonstrating site, which is the picture here in the slide. And basically what we are doing there in Porto this year and next year is to develop integration of renewable energy that is being installed by the municipality in several locations in the city, and to make it in a more efficient way, and also understanding how to take advantage of some controllability that may be available in those PV systems. Then also to act in terms of electric mobility, to install in the few car parks intelligent charging, and also making use of the flexibility that they may offer for the operation of the grid, but also to make use of the intelligent capability of the controlling systems of the EV charging stations. Then to act in terms of public lighting. In Portugal, the DSO has the responsibility of the public lighting in the country. So we are also, well, of course, implementing LED lighting, but also controlling point by point the lighting, so that the public lighting infrastructure can be used also to support other services than public lighting, such as sensors for the air, such as small low power EV charging stations, or Wi-Fi diffusion, or 5G antennas, or whatever. And finally, we have this center, this showcase for the energy transitions, the slide, the pictures that I showed you before, that has been built in order to promote to the visitors the best practices that we are carrying out in Porto regarding the energy transitions. And so very briefly, this was what I had to share with you for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulo, for sharing with us some thoughts on the RH side and the work that you have been doing, and how we can see the different pieces of the puzzle, designing the energy management and the different projects that each utility is having to tackle this. And considering this, I would also like to hear from ESB, from Paul. Hello, how are you?
Good morning, Andre.
I was just like to hear some comments on your side, either from what we have been talking about and also from the ESB side. If you share these perspectives in the type of projects that ESB has been developing, if you think that they are aligned with the current ESB strategy and the way that you oversee this energy transition and the transformation in the energy landscape.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there, so I'll just introduce myself to everybody as well. So Paul Fitzpatrick, Head of Customer Solutions at ESB. I'm fortunate enough that I've had the experience of working in about 80 plus countries around the globe, from the small islands of Nauru in the South Pacific to Europe and North America. So I'm bringing a lot of knowledge and a bit of pain along the way. So one of the things that we find as a national utility company in Ireland is, besides all the fun stuff we're doing around generation, around building new wind farms and solar, and now exploring into the use of hydrogen, there's only so much a utility company can start to develop if we don't start looking at what our customers are developing and making them a bit more smarter in utilizing their energy a bit better. Hence, we set up a company called Smart Energy Services within ESB, which really focuses on implementing those smart engagements with customers. So there is no quick win what we're seeing. So I can give you probably a couple examples throughout it. So if I take some of the customers that we work with, so whether it be Tesco's, who's a large retailer, the main international airports in Ireland, and then obviously manufacturing facilities, whether it be pharmaceuticals, etc. These companies just want to stick to their core business. You know, they're not in the energy business. And what we're probably seeing, and what you're probably seeing in some of the media in Ireland and GB, with the fluctuation of energy prices, you know, that can put businesses out of business pretty quickly, away from their core business, if they're not managing their energy supplies as good as that. So one of the things that ESB is doing, and it's basically, we're nearly becoming the personal trainer for these customers. You know, so we're going to tell customers, you know, where they're unfit in their energy, and putting them on a training program. And it was good to see from Travis and so forth around the smart energy metering. So it's good to get a base load, you know, so you can measure where you're starting from, identify the gaps, and it's engaging in a collaboration form with customers that what we're seeing from an energy consumption perspective is linked to what they're manufacturing or what their outputs or time of business is working at. So if I look at Tesco look at energy like a shoplifter, you know, so what are they doing to limit their costs? Because if I can save Tesco 10 million, that equates to about 100 million in revenue that they do not have to get in the door to cover that 10 million in revenue. Purely which is down to. So if I can save them 110 million, technically I'll become their best customer. But it's base loading through an energy management system, and then it's identifying from that, you know, putting in smart LED lighting. So we've got to step away from just LED lighting, and it's more smart LED lighting, because we're actually extrapolating the data from the lighting and finding these hot zones and cool zones within a facility where we can actually utilize it, and then feed that back to the customer, that we can actually say, actually 50% of your building is utilized here, and only 20% of your business is utilized in, you know, the far corner of a building. And it gives them the data then to utilize that information back. And then from that, we link it back to on-site renewables, whether it be solar, PV, and then putting a bit of battery on that. And that gives them a bit of stability around price fixing. Through whether it be, it's really an on-site PPA agreement, which is separate to what we try and do with corporate PPA agreements. So if we can put solar, whether it be on the rooftop or ground mounted in the facility, and they can get a percentage of it, a locked tariff for the next 20 years, their finance people are very clued in on that somewhat gives them some thought and comfort on their manufacturing facilities. And then when we feed that back into, and then we're really getting into the data. And again, this is where the personal trainer thought process comes in. It's a journey with the client to bring them through the process. You're now looking at swapping out CHPs for heat pumps into heat recovery. And then when you're really getting into the detail, you're getting into, you know, compressors that aren't probably fit for purpose, and putting in a bit more up-to-date compressors. Where we're fortunate enough at ESB is where most finance people and CEOs are saying, look, anything under 3 years, they usually self-finance themselves. A lot of the projects that we're working on, they don't pay within 3 years. So we're trying to basically go past that 3-year payback period, and ESB are quite happy to do it as a service. So it's classed as an operational lease from the client's perspective, but ESB have a fund, an annual fund that we utilize, and it ranges from either 75 million to 150 million, where ESB will be the owner and operator of the asset, and then we would sell it back through energy savings, whether it be through lighting, through a PPA agreement, and whether it be through heat or cooling. So there are things that we're implementing as we go through. So, and this is where the energy monitoring systems come through, and COVID sadly really brought it to light. So when we were working with the 3 national airports in Ireland, as we all know, travel restrictions were limited pretty quickly. We were able to look at the base loads of these airports and actually start shutting down certain sectors of the buildings, purely because they weren't being utilized. And then from that, the customer is able to really get down to the bare taxes on their energy consumption. And as obviously as flight comes back in, we're now ramping it back up. So this is where the data becomes key, because now your client is fundamentally seeing the uses of what a smart energy digitalization product can bring into it. And that's where you get your base load back into play. So my apologies for not having any slides on this matter, but that's what we find in ESB is being utilized. And this is what we're seeing our customers are happy to do with ESB. And again, it links them back to doing their own core business, and they're trusting ESB to worry about the energy part of the business.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for sharing those insights. And I think, as I was mentioning, it's really interesting to see the different approaches that different utilities have towards either energy management, the way you connect with the customers, and the type of solutions that you are designing. And in these last 5 minutes, I would open the floor for some Q&A. For sure, the audience has some intriguing questions for you. So I would open the floor for anyone that would like to ask something.
So I have a quick question. It's just, I'm wondering whether the push for the energy management is more coming from the client side, or is it more like a regulatory target that you want to achieve for decarbonization, or is it like a mix of everything and you're trying to create new product lines and new approaches to solve this? Curiosity.
From an ESP perspective, it's definitely not a regulatory approach, but what we find is, and again, it's the encouraging engagement of bringing the customer along with the journey as well, to show them where they're actually wasting energy, and then bring them along the journey of where you should be getting a healthy U value on utilization. So if you take an office block, and as we all know, we're all working remotely now, so you should be getting a nice healthy U curve, Monday to Friday. The increase of carbon in a building around 12 o'clock in the day, and then obviously the energy consumption filtering off about 5 o'clock to 6 p.m. And then obviously a nice flat base load at the weekend. So it's more, the data comes in useful when you're trying to identify where they're actually wasting product. So if we actually even took our own building, one of our head offices in Ireland, where we looked at our energy consumption. This is a brand new building, and if you think about even a brand new building where you would think it would be utilized correctly, a lot of these contractors, whether it be the M&E contractors, the job is just to get the building up and running and get the lights on, get the air conditioning working. But what we found was it wasn't being utilized correctly. So when we implemented the management system, we found about 30,000 euros worth of savings, and that was only in a 5-story building. So if you think we had the heating and cooling coming on at the same time, we lights coming on 24/7, and the building isn't used 24/7. There was a section of the floor which is through our trading business, which is 24/7, but the building was utilized 24/7 for that one floor, and that's where your data comes into play. And that's just an office building. Never mind, the likes of a Tesco store, which is a retail, and so forth.
I also want to answer on your question. I think it's a mix of some regulatory requirement when I guess different countries, the government help to push in terms of like the carbon target. So there's a regulatory requirement. At the same time, a lot is really come from the driver, from the corporation. Some could be because the big corporation have their own sustainability target, so they're looking for carbon footprint reduction. Some are really business perspective, they look for cost saving. So I think as ESB mentioned, I think it's also the case like they're doing things, they have to run the business like an airport, a building anyway, but the way they do it traditionally may not be the best. There's a lot of room for deliver the same or even better service for their tenant or user, but at the same time using the technology to be more efficient. I think that's how things get in. And again, like when there are utility or company willing to support them in terms of investment, and in fact there's a lot of like green building fund or rounds for providing funding. So people look for technology implementation. I guess all this add together are pushing like for applying those technology for. With usually I would say with anything like return on investment in like 3 years around that time, it's not too hard to be justified.
Thank you for the answers. We have here a question from Sanjay, more directed to CLP and EDP, about the percentage of energy being contributed by DERs in their respective markets. How do you anticipate the penetration is going to grow in the next 5 years? Who'd like to start?
So maybe on the CLP side, the geography is Hong Kong. Hong Kong is very, very dense. And in terms of the nature of the energy consumption, it doesn't lead towards a high demand for behind the meter energy storage scenarios. It's not that peaky. There are some exceptions certainly, but most no. I guess where DERs would come in is on solar penetration. There is a very, very generous feed-in tariff. From a general electricity tariff perspective, energy consumption cost is around 12 cents US, but our feed-in tariff is around 60 cents. So that's generated quite a lot of rooftop solar. For major part of the grid, it's been quite okay, but it's just for certain parts where we've got overhead lines, then it certainly requires us to be a bit more cognizant of how that integration does happen. In terms of going forward, I think what we're watching quite closely is on the uptake of EVs and how that's going to be interacting with the grid. But overall, in general in Hong Kong, just because of the density, it's quite different to some of the other geographies that are out there.
Okay, in Portugal, I can say that the current usage of renewables in our electricity share is more than 50%. So we have, although the penetration of PV is very low yet, so we have around 25% from hydro and 25% from wind, and 1% from solar, from PV. And we expect in the next 5 years PV to increase a lot. That is, I think it can grow from 1% to 10% or so of the share. So for sure, PV will play a very relevant role in the next 5 to 10 years in Portugal, and we have very ambitious targets for the renewables in terms of the share of electricity generation in Portugal. So we have already a very good amount, and it will increase in the future. So for us as operators of the distribution grid, this is really a challenge because a significant part of those renewables of this new PV and also the wind energy will be connected directly to the distribution grid.
And maybe just to ask here the question from Nico, top 3 DER types, battery PVs, EVCS, etc., in each of your markets during the 5 years anticipated growth. What would be the top 3 DERs? Maybe for pubs and then Paulo.
Sure.
It will be PV firstly, then the EVs, and afterwards the batteries, although the EVs are batteries. But okay, I would put PVs, EVs, and batteries storage.
It's a similar case for us here in Hong Kong at present. But I think as time goes by, we would expect a higher penetration of EVs. So that mix would certainly change, where EVs would probably go towards the top position.
Okay, cool. And now, probably to finish, given that we are running out of time, I would just ask you for a 1 minute closing remark under the topic of, and given that we are in free electrons, what's your perspective on the contributions that free electrons has been giving to the ongoing projects that you have and plans for the future? You have also partially covered this when you talked about the way you are innovating and the whole life cycle of innovation that you have within your organizations. But then for this 1 minute remark, I would challenge you basically to give this overview on what is the role that free electrons can play within this plans that you have for innovation. And perhaps we can start with ESB, then we go to EDP, and we finish with CLP. So, Paul.
Like from an ESG perspective, and again, I'm probably not the right person to talk about free electrons. I would leave that to John McKiernan and his team. But personally, like we find that free electrons is very useful to see what these startup companies are doing. As a utility company, yeah, you can get very old and boring. So it's nice to see what's the latest and the greatest being developed with these startup companies, and how ESB as a utility company can support these businesses, both from an ESB perspective, but also from our customers' perspective. And then obviously sharing that within the group, whether it be through our ESB International colleagues, at ESB International, or through ESB itself. So like from an ESB perspective, Free Electrons is a great program that we're delighted to be involved in. And hopefully it keeps on continuing, because in fairness, what we've seen over the last few years is great companies that are at their youth, and the knowledge that they're bringing is only being utilized for ESB, for example.
Thank you. Paulo.
I'd like to say that Free Electrons, the program, has given us the possibility to interact with dozens of startups in the last years, and that this interaction has been very fruitful for us, interesting for us to have also this idea of this developing market in terms of startups. Of course, in the end, we are working with a few of them, not all of them, it's impossible. But anyway, for us, it is very relevant to have this opportunity to interact with so many startups and to understand what the market has to offer us in terms of those challenges that I was talking about. And it has been a very good experience for us, for sure.
Thank you. On CLP side.
Maybe I can start, Travis. So it's certainly a key part of our work within innovation. It really helps us with identifying the right products that meet our customers' needs. One thing I can just communicate to the startups is that although if you don't necessarily get what you're looking for within this year, I think I'll also please keep your relationships with the utilities. We've certainly picked up startups that we met 2 or 3 years ago, which weren't right at the time, but have become right this year. So Dexma comes to mind, where it was a great benchmarking solution, which the technology we saw was really interesting, but then we found more of a need now. So I think just for everyone that's involved, don't think of it as a one-year interaction. It's an ongoing interaction, and I think the relationships that you build up here are going to be invaluable in the long run.
Travis, any comment here?
No, I think that's great conclusion. I think we, as Pop mentioned, sometime is the some new solution, or is the maturity not just about the startup, but also the market demand generation. Keep the relationship, and then I guess that's something I'm sure is along that journey that you see that relationship will help. Okay,
perfect. So let me thank all of you for being here and to attend this session. I think it was another BU plus startup, really interesting panel on this topic of energy management. I think that we gather here some valuable insights as part of the Free Electrons 2021 and the Sprint Module 2 that is running virtually. Unfortunately, we are not able to be in Hawaii as John was suggesting here in the chat. Hopefully next year we'll be able to have something in person. But for now, the only suggestion that I can give is that we can move to the next session, which unfortunately it will be on a Zoom session, but that's the best we can get for now. So once again, let me thank you to Pubs and Travis from CLP, Paulo from EDP, and Paul from ESB for joining this session. Thank you all, and see you in the next session, which will take place on a different link. We'll move to the startups, utilities only sessions. Okay, so thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.